as I was saying, these deviant entities, these beings, they don't have to follow universal law, which is where we get this Luciferian satanic concept from. You know, the whole story of Lucifer falling from God's grace. God's grace is the universe and all its laws and rules that we as living beings must abide by in our many different vibratory frequency forms that we incarnate as. These benevolent ones, they love mankind. They look upon us as children that they must nurture and guide. And we are in a day of spiritual ascension, a day of awakening, where we're receiving a lot of positive frequency, directed at us, and that's altering our DNA. As human beings, our genetic code is being rewritten as we are living, and this also alters our state of consciousness and also allows us to use senses other than the 5 regular senses that we commonly understand. Now, there are a lot of people that can see, hear, and feel many of these different these beings residing on different vibratory frequencies. And some of them are known as mediums or whatever you want to call them. I don't know much about that side of things. I'm just going by what I've learned internally, or that I've looked inwards and remembered, I should say. Yeah, it's all very hard to use the language that's bestowed upon us because that's also very limiting. I'm not sure if that's been done purposely or it's by sheer coincidence, but I highly doubt it, that it's a coincidence. Anyways, we know these beings that are vibrating on a higher level of frequency as angels. We've had many names for them in the past. Gods, angels, aliens. The names go on and on and on. But there's always been this constant struggle between the benevolent and the malevolent. So these negative ones, the ones that are vibrating on a lower frequency, they have chosen to drop down to that lower frequency by their own free will. And they have sort of denounced the Creator, the Source, God, Ilahi, Eloi, Brahman, the Great Self, however you want to define the sustainer of our entire universe and every other universe that's connected to it. The multiverse theory is pretty close to what is. I mean, I'm pretty sure of it. I try not to delve too much into reading things, but I read a lot as well. But I don't like to take that on as, fact. I like to read what I read and then go inwards. And if it's confirmed with what I've got internally, with what I've read externally, then there's a close possibility that it's very true. I mean, I'm still recovering from my last sedation, so I'm not able to articulate and express myself thoroughly. But I do know that there are these angels that are guiding us from a distance. And many TIs have made contact with these higher vibratory beings. And they have altered our state of consciousness. They have altered our DNA just by sheer contact with them. I mean, the best explanation I can come up with is that fork, that in science where you tap and then you place that metal fork next to another piece of metal or next to water, and that vibration is transferred from that vibrating fork onto whatever object you've placed it next to. Excuse me. But then you got these lower vibing entities who have chosen to fall, who don't have to follow universal law, don't have to follow the laws of God per se, and are wreaking havoc on this planet through us, influencing us. I know it sounds like a far cry and a very mystic overview, and there are a lot of people out there that are just like, oh, that hocus pocus shit is just for small-minded people who lack the ability to get up and act for themselves and just place all their dreams and hopes on fictitious entities. I say this is so far from the truth. Those people are also disconnected and are vibrating on a much lower frequency. It's in our scriptures. It's in most of the scriptures that are out there. And the most basic understanding is our chakra system throughout our body. Once a person gets the chakras aligned and balancing, I mean, the potential of the human being is amazing. And I only understand a little bit of this understanding. And it's changed my whole consciousness. It's changed the way I view this world. It's literally changed the way light enters my eyes and how my brain decodes that light. I mean, I'm able to see light on plants, like a glowing field, and also on babies, and very rarely on adults. Because for some reason, you know, the powers that be, they don't like this positive frequency. They don't like this higher level of vibratory frequency that mankind can exist on. And that's why we're trapped in this cycle of birth and death, constantly coming back to this vibratory frequency and still missing the mark, which is basically what the word sin means. To sin, to be a sinner, is basically to miss the mark. And that's an archery term. So, you know, we're coming back and back over and over again, and we're not really learning the lessons that we need to learn to transgress to a higher level of existence beyond the earthly realm, beyond the earthly vibratory frequencies that we can climb to here. There have been many, many enlightened beings of the past that we know of and that have been placed on such a higher pedestal than what they actually deserve. And there are many that have gone unheard of and have suffered extreme difficulties throughout their life because of their higher vibratory frequency. I don't think anything in this world that we're living in today caters for anyone vibrating on that higher frequency. It is very hard to maintain a balance between this modern society that we're living in and maintaining that high level of vibratory frequency. You know, in the Tao Te Ching, it says a person will understand the Tao in the morning and forget it by night. That's basically a human being raising their frequency and lowering their frequency, given what they've been throughout that day, or what they faced. It's very, very hard to maintain. And just the general life itself, on a basic level, is hard to maintain. But I do believe that there is some connection between target individuals and the vibratory frequency that they're on, because we can also download information from this energy grid that I referred to earlier. And that, I believe, from what I pull out of my head, is EL, which is why electricity is, it's got the elec, the EL, the beginning of it. Like most of the angels have EL at the end of their name. Michael, Raphael, Amatil. They've all got the same E-L at the end. And also, Jesus mentioned on the cross, Eloi, Eloi, sabachthani. It's my God, why have you forsaken me? There you go again, El. Who was he tapping into? That energy grid, the self, the source of life. And I don't think these lower vibrational entities who work in unison with human beings, who allow themselves to be taken hostage, as I put it, by these lower vibrational entities, because they have taken away our understanding of ourself. Being a human being means you're very, very powerful, especially if you're completely awake and vibrating on that higher frequency, which we're made to be vibrating on. So they've taken this knowledge away from us. And when we see these lower vibrational entities where they can, they can whisk things in and out of our, spectrum of light, we think that they've got powers greater than us. Well, there we go again, human beings referring to power and our understanding of that terminology. It's just all mixed up and scrambled, even within our own language. So I do believe that even the ancient languages like Sanskrit or Hebrew or Arabic have a better way of explaining, a deeper way of explanation towards anything. And coming from an Arabic speaking background, I can sort of see that. Within Arabic, there are many ways you can explain a certain object or certain directions or whatever. Even when you're referring to an auntie or an uncle, there's feminine and masculine terms for a same word. Like khalto or khal, means aunt or uncle on your mother's side. But in English, there's just auntie and uncle. And that's just a general reference to aunties and uncles on your mother's side and your father's side. So there's limitations within the English language which disable us from understanding things deeper within life, things that are necessary to understand. I mean, it would be great to be an aesthetic and go out and live in the in the wilderness, but human beings depend on one another. So how long can a human being live out in the wilderness, cut off from his or her fellow family? And when I say fellow family, I mean the human family. As Confucius said, we are all one family under this sun, under this sky. Regardless of our different variations of colorings or ways that we articulate the world around us, I believe mankind has a lot to learn from each other instead of subjugating one another, which is what we've been trying to do for almost forever, since the fall of man, which is what's referred to in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve's fall. And this was all to do with those lower vibratory entities who again played with our minds, played with Adam and Eve's mind, and they dropped in vibratory frequency. Now I know these are just parables and metaphors, and then Adam and Eve aren't specifically beings that actually existed, but they are used as a metaphor. And even their names, Eve and Atom, why do we call the night that passes an Eve? Why do we call an atom an Adam? The first man, which is named after the basic building block of life. Even the Egyptians understood this deeply. Like all great civilizations, ancient civilizations I should say, they all reached these understandings. But somewhere along the lines they were corrupted. And again, that's to do with the lower vibratory entities wiggling their way into the civilization and corrupting it internally, which is what's happening now in our modern world. But we just can't see it happening because we're too consumed with our own self-centered lifestyles. Being a TI